Most composers don't take the time to sketch, but skipping this step can really hurt your writing process. Let me show you a few simple steps I use to sketch with the intervals. It's fast, clear, and once you try it, you might not want to skip it either. Let's begin by choosing just 2 intervals. Everything else in the music will come from these 2. We keep things simple and just count the half steps between the notes. A 5 interval because it has 5 half steps, and the major second becomes a 2 interval since it has, you bet, 2 half steps. Next, let's figure out the matching or complementary intervals. An easy trick is to take the lower note and move it up by 1 octave. Since an octave has 12 half steps, we can just subtract our interval number from 12 to find the corresponding partner. Now let's use these intervals to build triads. You might ask, why not just start with triads and chords in the first place? Well, I'm not thinking in traditional harmony here. I use the intervals to explore new and interesting musical ideas. This helps me stay open to fresh sounds that you might miss if you only think in standard chords. Let me show you what I mean. We combine intervals using a plus sign. Here's an example showing our 2 starting intervals combined, a 2 plus 5. We start on B flat, go up 2 half steps to reach the middle C, then up another 5 half steps, which brings us to the F. Now, let's explore the different positions of this structure. Just like with single intervals, we can move the lowest note up by 1 octave. When we do this, the structure becomes 5 plus 5. Do it once more, and we get 5 plus 2. Remember, always start with the lowest note and count up to the next higher one. These 2 intervals, when combined, create a sound that feels open and neutral. That means you can move them around easily and use them in all sorts of musical settings, including major and minor triads, pentatonic, and even extended chords. This flexibility is great to know before we dive into the sketch. That's why I love using this IC, which stands for interval combination. As soon as we are working with 2 or more intervals, we call it an IC. Let's move on to the sketch now. I will keep it simple at first and repeat the main structure a few times. There's a reason for that, and here is why. You want to give your audience a bit of time to get more familiar with that sound, and don't be confused by the simplicity. In the orchestrations, we will not present the whole notes to the audience. We will make it more interesting to everybody. But that is a good starting point because we introduce the main character of the story, so to speak, that is the character of this IC. Now, once we have this established, let's make a copy in the next line, and you can tell by the first half note in each line that it is the same structure still. But what happens in the second half of the bar? That is the interesting part because we gradually add more complexity with every line now. We essentially transition from close harmony, that is this guy here, all happening within 1 octave, to open harmony, that is this guy here. So simply take the inner voice, put it up an octave, and then you would create this structure. So that is what we also call a position change. Although it transitions from close to open harmony, but it doesn't change the character really. Let's isolate the 2 intervals in that 3-part structure again. So we have a 2 down there, and we have the 5. Let's not touch the 5 for now. Let's only deal with the 2. And this 2 goes to a 10. Guess what that interval is right here? That's a 10. We now use an anchor note of that 2 interval, and the anchor is the middle C. Meaning, we don't just use a plain position change, which would have been the C and the B flat still on the second structure. But this does not happen. What we did instead is the position change and a transposition. And now this 10 interval happens in between the tones D and C. The beauty of that technique is that the nature doesn't change even if you transpose the interval, no matter where it starts, on which note it starts. So that is why these guys down there will sound connected. It won't change the sonic universe. And now let's look at the top guy. We have a 5 and this becomes a 7. And as you can tell, the G note is not part of the regular position change of this 5 interval consisting of the tones C and F. But by using the anchor, we give the audience enough to hold on to and introduce a new sound. Now let me just play you these 2 lines so that you get the idea of how we add complexity with the second line. So one of the next possible steps that you can take, we created rather big distances right there between the top guys, right? That's the F and the C, and the bottom guys, that's the B flat and the D down there. What I like to do is connect the dots just with scale tone movement. And that is pretty much how I wrote this whole third line. Also down there, the B flat, I don't want to miss this. So our task here is, well, that's a common note. So let's just hold it since we have enough movement going on top. Once we have movement in one place, keep it more simple in another place. And you will separate the voices better and clearer for the audience. What we do is literally just a copy paste of the previous line always and add a little bit more complexity with each line. It's always several steps that lead to something more sophisticated. And this is part of the process. You begin with something rough, let's say, maybe even a little messy. And then as you play with it and make small changes and adjustments, you start to discover little parts that you really love. Don't miss the next video. It's a follow-up to this one. We will take the same sketch and turn it into 3 completely different orchestrations. It will be a lot of fun, and we will dive into all the nerdy little details that composers love. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.